up, guys? Soon to the Savage back, and today I am here with NFL Week 15 predictions. Man, we have come a long way ever since September. I've done this since the beginning of September, and now we're in the beginning of December, nearing the end of the regular season. Only 3 weeks left to go. As this is a pretty big week, a lot's on the line. But enough about what I said, because we have some predictions to do. It's Week 15, but we have 16 predictions to do. But anyways, without further ado, let's just get this video started. So starting off, we're going to be going on with our Thursday night football matchup, which is actually going to be the last Thursday night game of the NFL regular season. It is between the New York Jets and the Baltimore Ravens. Starting off, the Jets came off a 22-21 victory over the Miami Dolphins, and the Ravens came off a 24-17 victory over the Buffalo Bills. So Jets, I don't know what you guys are trying to do this year. I don't know, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to tank? Are you trying to be a playoff team? Are you just trying to be a mediocre team? I don't get it. You would lose games earlier this year to the Dolphins. You'd beat the Cowboys, get stunned by the Patriots. I just don't understand you guys. You don't even know how to tank properly. But anyway, starting off last week, Sam Darnold had a decent game, threw for 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. And it turns out that Le'Veon Bell doesn't exactly fit the scheme of the New York Giants, as Bilal Powell had 74 rushing yards, which I think might be more rushing yards than Le'Veon Bell's had in a game this season. But Robbie Anderson, 7 receptions, 117 yards and a touchdown. Other than that, no one else really did anything. You guys beat the Dolphins, not really much of an accomplishment. And then the Baltimore Ravens, defense is facing like a really good team on defense. I kind of question you guys. Starting out with Lamar Jackson, only threw for 145 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Mark Ingram only had 50 rushing yards, and Jackson only had 40 rushing yards. Offense for both teams was very limited. The top receiver was Hayden Hurst, 3 receptions, 73 yards, and a touchdown. But yeah. Other than that, you guys were just barely able to beat the Bills, but fortunately, you have a good defense, so Josh Allen for the Bills really struggles against that. So I got to pick one of this one. Ravens are favored by 17 to win. They're going to win, but screw it. They're going to cover the spread. Ravens win and cover the spread. So now you have our very next match between the Seattle Seahawks and the Carolina Panthers. Starting off, the Seahawks came off a 28-12 loss against the LA Rams on Sunday Night Football, and the Panthers came off a 40-20 loss against the Atlanta Falcons. Starting off with the Seahawks, well, I was expecting a little bit more out of you, but you guys really disappointed me with your performance. I thought, this would be easy pickings. You would beat the Rams and just completely prove that you're the class of the NFC West. Well, it turns out that Russell Wilson might have just lost his chance to win MVP, because with a game against the game that he had against the Rams, kind of makes him lose his chance. Russell Wilson had 245 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. Chris Carson ran for 76 yards. DK Metcalf had 78 receiving yards. Other than that, the guys were just completely flat. And what sucks for you is that the 49ers won and you lost. So now you have the 5th seed. You are no longer a 2 seed. You're a 5 seed, which might not be very good for you going into the playoffs. I mean, sure, you'll get to play the Cowboys, but then you got to play someone else. What I'm really trying to say is that you might be in some trouble. And then you have the Carolina Panthers, and like I said, Kyle Allen is absolutely trash. It's literally all Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey had 53 rushing yards and 82 receiving yards. DJ Moore, 81 receiving yards. And other than that, Kyle Allen was completely flat. He threw for 293 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks, and had some struggles against a Falcons defense. As I keep saying, one of the worst defenses in the league, and yet Kyle Allen still failed to produce against them. So honestly, I gotta pick a winner for this one. Seahawks are favored by about 6.5 to win. I believe that, and I do believe they will win and cover the spread. So now we are moving on to our very next match between the New England Patriots and the Cincinnati Bengals. Patriots came off a 23-16 loss against the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Bengals came off a 27-19 loss against the Cleveland Browns. Starting off, so the Patriots, well, it finally happened. The refs were not on your side. In fact, the refs were screwing you over. It's about time that you got the effects of ref ball and how you got the Super Bowl win, but honestly, it doesn't matter because you're facing the Bengals, which shouldn't be a challenge. But you got yourselves another Spygate scandal, possibly. Like, why would you record Bengals games? Are you really that nervous about facing them? Doesn't matter. Tom Brady threw for 169 yards, has 69, with a touchdown and a pick. Not a very good game. In terms of rushing, James White only had 33 rushing yards. And for receiving, well, the only big receiver was Julian Edelman with 8 receptions, 95 yards, and a touchdown. The touchdown came off a flea flicker in the first half. And then you have the Bengals. Well, at this point, bust for Burrow, the Heisman Trophy winner. But anyways, Andy Dalton, 262 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. But Joe Mixon, earlier in the season I was saying he's horrible. He is a bust, especially in fantasy. But I got him in one of my fantasy leagues, and recently he has been surging, had 23 carries for 146 yards and a touchdown. In terms of receiving, he hasn't really been a receiving back, only 3 receptions for 40 yards. Tyler Boyd, 5 receptions for 79 yards, 75 yards, and that's it. When you look at the statistics, both these teams offensively are not good, mainly in yards per game. But when you look at defense, Patriots have one of the best, and the Bengals have one of the worst. So it's a very easy decision. Patriots will win this game, but will they cover the spread at 9.5? No, I think the Bengals are going to make this a little bit closer than it should be. So Patriots win, but don't cover the spread. And now you have our very next matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Detroit Lions. Lions came off a 20-7 loss against the Minnesota Vikings, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers came off a 38-35 victory over the Indianapolis Colts. So starting out with the Buccaneers, I'm not sure how to feel about you guys because Jameis Winston has been incredibly electric. 456 yards, 4 touchdowns, but 3 picks. He could actually lead the league in passing yards and touchdowns. He could do that. Leading the league in interceptions. Oh, hell yeah. But that's bad. But yeah. Ronald Jones, the second, and Peyton Barber only combined for about 70 rushing yards. Other than that, what's really going to hurt is that you guys might have lost Mike Evans for the rest of the season. Gatsby had Arians, or Bruce Arians. He's saying that it would be shocking if he made a return. So anyways, Chris Godwin, 7 receptions, 91 yards, and O.J. Howard finally coming out, but not that much. 4 receptions for 73 yards. Then you got the Lions. Well, apparently once that black cat ran on the field against for the Giants-Cowboys game, all cat teams are 1-18 since that occurred. And the only team that actually picked up a win was the Bengals. But Bengals another word for failure or something like that, so that's why sometimes I call the Bengals the Bungles. Anyways, David Blau, 205 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks, kind of proving that maybe the Thanksgiving game was just a fluke. Bo Scarborough had 65 rushing yards, but I think what really is impressive about this Lions squad is their wide receiver duo with Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones Jr. The two have been absolutely electric this year. They're 7th in passing yards, and well, that's all thanks to the receivers. But both have horrible defenses, but some actually pretty good offenses. But of course, Jameis Winston, I would bet over David Blau any day. So they're only favored by 3.5 to win, which is incredibly low. But anyways, it doesn't matter. Buccaneers win this game. And now you have our very next matchup, which is a classic NFC rivalry, and maybe the most classic rivalry in football in general, between the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers. Bears came off a 31-24 victory over the Dallas Cowboys, and the Packers came off a 20-15 victory over the Washington Redskins. Starting out with the Bears, you guys have been surging recently, and I'm honestly kind of interested. Mitch Trubisky, like Cowboys, you made freaking Mitch Trubisky look like Lamar Jackson. Trubisky, 244 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick, but he also had 63 rushing yards and a touchdown. The pick, a very good play made by one of the Cowboys cornerbacks, Jordan Lewis, as he was able just to get a toe tap. In terms of rushing, David Montgomery and Mitch Trubisky led the pack. And receiving, J.P. Holtz was your top receiver with 56 yards, but Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller, if Trubisky wasn't their quarterback, they could be maybe one of the most dangerous wide receiver threats in all of football. But, of course, you're stuck behind him, so, yeah. But then you have the Packers. You're 10-3, but I'm not all that impressed. When I actually look at your stats, you're incredibly mediocre. Like, your yards per game is abysmal. You're 23rd in terms of passing and receiving yards, rushing yards. You're mediocre, and then your defensive yards are also either mediocre or not good. And anyways, Aaron Rodgers had 195 yards, a touchdown, no picks. Aaron Jones, 134 yards and a touchdown, following up with 58 receiving yards. Other than that, you only scored 20 against the Redskins defense. They're one of the worst defenses in the league, but I didn't really want to talk about this. I really wanted to talk about the playoff picture because currently the Bears still have a chance. They are 7-6, and they are 2 games back of the second wildcard spot. And they do still have to play the Minnesota Vikings, who have the 6th spot. So honestly, that could get pretty interesting, but gotta pick a winner for this one. You know what? I don't care. I want the Bears to win. I need the Bears to win so I can get my number 1 seed back. So yeah, Bears win this game. And now you have our very next match between the Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs. Broncos came off a 38-24 victory over the Houston Texans, and the Kansas City Chiefs came off a 23-16 victory over the New England Patriots. So starting off with the Denver Broncos. So maybe Drew Lock does have a future. I mean, you're facing the Texans, and generally they don't have the greatest defense in the world. But honestly, the numbers that came out of Drew Lock were absolutely ridiculous. 22 for 27, 309 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Those are very good numbers. Philip Lindsay also ran for 51 yards and a touchdown. That's pretty good. But this year, in the first round, the 20th overall pick, they ended up drafting Noah Fant, tight end. And you know what? He did a good job. 4 receptions, 113 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, he kind of was drafted so he could be the perfect target for Joe Flacco because he loves throwing checkdowns to the tight ends. But other than that, very good game you guys played against a team that's going for the Super Bowl. And then you have the Chiefs. You were the you guys benefited from horrible officiating. You know, the AFC Championship game, you guys were the ones that got screwed over. But you guys, this time, all the calls go in your favor. Patrick Mahomes had 283 yards, a touchdown, a pick. Honestly, not that great of a game from him. You have a little bit of a running back by committee because you had LaShawn McCoy doing a few rushes, then Spencer Ware. Honestly, wasn't too good. Travis Kelce, 7 receptions for 66 yards, no touchdowns, and Tyreek Hill, 6 receptions for 62 yards. So, this one is a fairly obvious pick who's going to win. Obviously, it's going to be the Chiefs. And now you have our very next matchup between the Miami Dolphins and the New York Giants. The Dolphins came off a 22-21 loss against the New York Jets, and the New York Giants came off a 23-17 loss against the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football in overtime. So let's get to start out with the Dolphins. Well, you guys, you started winning again, and then you realized we got a tank. And you did just that. You let the Jets pull out a last-second field goal to win the game. Ryan Fitzpatrick had 245 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. I think it's just as sad that you also have no rushing game. He was your leading rusher with 65 rushing yards. On terms of receiving, no one really broke out because, Devontae Parker was very, very quiet, only had 28 receiving yards. Isaiah Ford was your top receiver with 92 yards. Honestly, you guys are proving to me that you still suck. I mean, you always did, but you guys are starting to tank again, which is good. Hoping to bust for Burrow because you can't tank for Tua. I mean, to tank for Tua, comes within a huge gamble. And then the New York Giants. You know what? As much crap as I give Eli Manning, as much I love to give him so much crap, he didn't play too bad. He actually had a pretty good performance against Philly. Threw for 203 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, that's not amazing, but that's not too bad. Saquon Barkley had 66 rushing yards, but honestly, the whole game was to Darius Slayton. 5 receptions, 154 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Other than that, you guys were completely screwed over by the NFL once again. You guys, even though you guys did lead by 14, you blew that lead, but once again, you were screwed over by overtime because the Eagles did win the coin toss. They got first possession, and Carson Wentz, just him and Zach Ertz just tore down the field. Him, Zach Ertz, and Boston Scott just tore down the field for the game-winning touchdown. Gotta pick a winner of this one. You know what? I'll say it. Giants win and cover the spread. And now you have our very next matchup, which is most likely going to be NFL Game of the Week between the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans. Now, before I start off with this, just to let you know, they are both 8-5. They are tied for the division, and they still have to play each other 2 times this year. Currently, Houston has the division, and Tennessee has the 7 seed, which it's not good enough to make the playoffs because top 6 make it in. But anyways, let's just get started out. The Texans came off a 38-24 loss against the Denver Broncos, and the Tennessee Titans came off a 42-21 victory over the Oakland Raiders. Starting off with the Houston Texans, I don't get what happened last week. I thought you guys were going to pull off a victory, but of course you got thrashed by Drew Lock, proving that your secondary is a steaming pile of crap. Deshaun Watson only had 292 yards, touchdown and 2 picks. Carlos Hyde ran for 73 yards. Watson had 44 yards on a touchdown. Other than that, your DeAndre Hopkins did his thing. 7 receptions, 120 yards, and a touchdown. So very good performance that he put up. But other than that, no one else really shined from the Texans. I mean, you lost the Broncos. It's kind of embarrassing. But then you have the Titans, who you guys have been hot recently. Maybe Marcus Mariota really was the issue, because Ryan Tannehill threw for 391 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Very good game played, but also as something that I noticed that as the season progresses, the later you get into the season, Derrick Henry becomes a more dangerous threat. He's been incredibly dangerous. He ran for 103 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, the thing is, he's not as explosive in the air. He's always just been known to be the guy to run the ball. He doesn't get the receptions like Mike. But he only had 6 receiving yards. And then A.J. Brown, he broke out for 5 receptions for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, Titans, I am impressed to see what you have put up recently. But last season, one of the things I noticed is that you were way too inconsistent. But you know what? You're favored by 3 to win this game. And yes, I will say you win the game and cover the spread. And now you have our final 1 o'clock football matchup between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Redskins. The Eagles came off a 23-17 victory over the New York Giants in overtime on Monday Night Football, and the Redskins came off a 20-15 loss against the Green Bay Packers. So starting off with the Eagles, come on, guys. You nearly lost to the Giants. Look at this. Carson Wentz, 325 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. That's pretty good. Boston Scott was your main, him and Zach Ertz were your main guys. Boston Scott had 59 rushing yards and a touchdown, but he followed that up with 69 receiving yards, 69, whatever. And then the other guy, of course, was Zach Ertz. 9 receptions, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns, including the game winner. But anyways, other than that, how is this a football game? How did you let the Giants get out in front? How did you let them get to a 17-3 lead? I mean, should I be happy you came back? No! Giants have one of the worst defenses in the league. You guys, honestly, whoever wins the NFC East, they're just going to get a home playoff game. They're going to get absolutely destroyed by either the 49ers, Seahawks, Vikings, Bears, Rams, and that's about it. I don't care, because y'all suck. I don't know who wants to win the NFC East between the Cowboys and the Eagles, but honestly, neither of you deserve it. And then you have the Redskins. Dwayne Haskins was... Honestly, he doesn't have too much. He's in a horrible situation in Washington. Had 170 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Adrian Peterson had 76 rushing yards and a touchdown, proving that he still has a little bit of life, even though he's really advancing in his years. And Terry McLaurin had 4 receptions for 57 yards and a touchdown. Now, in terms of your defense against the Packers, you only held Aaron Rodgers to 195 yards in passing, which is pretty good. But you let Aaron Jones run for 134 yards and 58 receiving yards. That was your real downfall. So, Eagles are favored by 6 to win, and I believe that. Eagles will win. And now you have our very first 4 o'clock matchup of Week 15 between the Cleveland Browns and the Arizona Cardinals. Starting off, the Cleveland Browns came off a 27-19 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Cardinals came off a 23-17 loss against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Starting off with the Browns, why... I know I praised you guys for the offseason that you had. I was saying you guys are going to win the AFC North. But the performance that you put up against the Bengals, especially Baker Mayfield, was nothing less than disgusting. Baker Mayfield, 192 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 picks. Didn't even complete 50% of his passes. And this is against the Bengals, one of the worst defensive teams in the league. Nick Chubb did his thing, 106 rushing yards. Jarvis Landry, 76 receiving yards. And Odell Beckham Jr. is begging to leave Cleveland. Man, Cleveland, that was a I praised you getting OBJ in the offseason, but at this point, it's not worth it. You guys clearly, OBJ is not happy. And then you have the Cardinals. You guys lost to Duck Hodges, or Delvin Hodges. Anyways, Kyler Murray had, to me, kind of his first real rookie game. 20 for 30, 194 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 picks. Kenyon Drake had 37 carries for no touchdowns. Your top receiver is Christian Kirk, 8 receptions for 85 yards. And then David Johnson had 2 receptions for 34 yards and a touchdown. Honestly, offense for you guys was completely crap. And so is your defense kinda getting roasted by Duck Hodges. But gotta pick a winner for this one. Even though Cleveland's favored to win this game, and I believe that. Cleveland wins and covers the spread. And now you have our very next matchup between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Oakland Raiders. Jaguars came off a 45-10 loss against the LA Chargers, and the Raiders came off a 42-21 loss against the Tennessee Titans. Starting off with the Jaguars. So, Gardner Minshew maybe isn't the answer. Had only 162 yards, a touchdown, no picks, doing better than Big Dick Nick, or Nick Foles. Leonard Fournette only had 50 rushing yards, and your top receiver was DJ Chark. 9 receptions for 75 yards. Other than that, offense was just completely flat, as Phillip Rivers decided today was the day that he was not going to suck for once, and just completely ravaged your defense. And then you have the Oakland Raiders. You had a chance for the playoffs. I thought there was a chance that you could win. But at this point, you are looking out, and the odds that you make the playoffs are not good. But anyways, Derek Carr had 262 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. You guys were without Josh Jacobs, but DeAndre Washington did an okay job. 14 carries for 53 yards and a touchdown. Darren Waller had 6 receptions for 72 yards and no touchdowns, and that's about it. Honestly, you showed life in the first half. It was tied 21-21, but then, of course, Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry just ravaged you guys. So, gotta pick a winner for this one. I don't really like the Jaguars, so I'm going to say Raiders win this game, but don't cover the spread, which is 6.5. I'm going to say they win by 4. And now you have what was originally supposed to be the Sunday Night Football matchup this week, but it did get flexed to 4 o'clock, between the Minnesota Vikings and the LA Chargers. Starting off, the Vikings came off a 20-7 victory over the Detroit Lions, and the Chargers came off a 45-10 victory over the Jaguars. And so starting off with Minnesota, well, you beat the Lions, not that much of an accomplishment. But Kirk Cousins, he's been looking better. I gave him so much crap, but he's proving me wrong, which is a good sight for the Vikings, paying him $84 million guaranteed. But he had 242 yards, a touchdown, and no picks. Dalvin Cook, he played at 62 rushing yards and a touchdown, followed that up with 13 receiving yards. But I think the big thing is Stephon Diggs, 6 receptions, 92 yards. He's been showing that he's been able to do well, especially now that Thielen's gone. But Thielen, he is going to be returning this week, which is a good sign for Minnesota, because Diggs is great, but I think him and Thielen could possibly be unstoppable. And then you have the Chargers. They showed life way too late. Phillip Rivers had 314 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon were as dangerous as ever. Austin Eckler, though, 101 yards, no touchdowns, but had 112 receiving yards and a touchdown. Melvin Gordon had 55 rushing yards, and he did follow that up with 29 receiving yards. So an okay game from him. And then you had Keenan Allen, 83 receiving yards, Mike Williams, 63 receiving yards, and Hunter Henry, 39 receiving yards. Williams and Henry got the touchdowns. So, honestly, I don't know what to think about this game. Even though the Chargers did show late life, honestly, I'm going to go with the upset and say that the Chargers will pull off the victory, even though Minnesota is favored by 2.5 to win this game. And now you have our very next match between the LA Rams and the Dallas Cowboys. The Rams came off a 28-12 victory over the Seattle Seahawks, and the Cowboys came off a 31-24 loss against the Chicago Bears. So starting off with the Rams, well, all I can say is, how did you do that? Facing the Seahawks, I thought you guys would just get completely crushed, but Jared Goff had 293 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. So, okay performance by Goff. Todd Gurley getting a bit more as being the workhorse, as he had 79 rushing yards and a touchdown. Followed that up with 34 receiving yards. In terms of receiving, your top guy was Tyler Higbee. 7 receptions, 116 yards, no touchdowns. Honestly, your defense, you stopped Russell Wilson, which now gives Lamar Jackson the clear path to MVP with 3 weeks left. So, Rams, I cast you aside earlier, but you guys are currently in the playoff hunt, which is pretty good. And then you have the Dallas Cowboys. How did you make Mitchell Trubisky look like Lamar Jackson? Starting off, Dak Prescott, 334 yards, a touchdown, and no picks. So I'll say, very good game that he played. And same with Ezekiel Elliott. 19 carries for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns. Receivers, Michael Gallup had 109 yards, no touchdowns, but Cooper Kupp had 83 yards and a touchdown. So honestly, a pretty good game that you guys played, but at least in terms of offense. But most of that was in garbage time, and your defense did get picked apart by Mitch Trubisky. So if I got to pick a winner for this one, I'm going to go with the Rams, because they've been hot recently, and the Cowboys show me that they falter against actually good teams. It started when they played the Saints in Week 4, faced their first team that actually gave a damn to show up, and they finally got exposed. So thank you to all the teams that have been exposing the Cowboys and their foolish optimism. But once again, Rams win and cover the spread, which is only 1.5. And now you have our final 4 o'clock matchup of Week 15 between the Atlanta Falcons and the San Francisco 49ers. Falcons came off a 40-20 victory over the Carolina Panthers, and the 49ers came off an epic victory over the Saints, 48-46. I'll get into that later, but anyways, the Falcons, you guys are a little too inconsistent to me, because you show that you guys are dead, but instead of tanking, you decide to perform. Matt Ryan had 313 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. Devontae Freeman actually had a pretty good game, 84 rushing yards and a touchdown. Your top receiver was Olamide Zacchaeus, who only had 1 reception, but that was 93 yards and a touchdown. But other than that, your top receivers were Calvin Ridley, 5 receptions, 76 yards and a touchdown, and Julio Jones, 5 receptions, 66 yards and a touchdown. So honestly, Falcons, I can't quite get a grasp on you, because I think you should be tanking, but of course, you guys keep performing. So very confusing to see what you guys are doing. And then you have the 49ers. Well, you guys are highly regarded to have one of the best defenses in football. Well, the Saints made me think twice about your defense. Because, let's see, Jimmy Garoppolo had 349 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a pick. I still have my doubts about Garoppolo, but I think he could be the future. In terms of rushing, Raheem Mostert had 69 carries, another 69, and a touchdown. Emmanuel Sanders just completely ravaged the Saints defense with 157 yards, a touchdown, and he also had 35 passing yards and a touchdown. So honestly, though, but in terms of defense, you guys gave up a little over 400 yards. So honestly, that is very questionable, but still, good performance. So I got to pick a winner for this one, and San Fran is favored by 10 to win. But you know what? Just to keep my playoff hopes alive, I'm going to say that the Atlanta Falcons pull off the major upset and have the Saints make their resurge to the number 1 seed. And now you have our Sunday Night Football matchup. This was originally a 1 o'clock football game, but it got flexed to Sunday Night Football between the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Starting off, the Bills came off a 24-17 loss against the Baltimore Ravens, and the Pittsburgh Steelers came off a 23-17 win over the Arizona Cardinals. Starting off with the Bills, well, I'll be honest, whenever I see a team that has a very good defense, that's when Josh Allen falters. And he did. 17 for 39, less than 50% of his passes completed, 146 yards, and a touchdown. That was not a great performance, but Devin Singletary showed that he had some life, 89 rushing yards and no touchdowns, and had 29 receiving yards and no touchdowns. But other than that, your top receiver was Dawson Knox with 37 receiving yards, but he only had 1 reception. Cole Beasley looks to maybe be Josh Allen's favorite target, and John Brown only had 26 receiving yards. So honestly, facing a team with a good defense, that's where Josh Allen really falters. And then you have the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you were to tell me that a guy named Delvin Hodges, or Duck Hodges in this case, would be taking the Steelers to an 8-5 record, I would have called you crazy. I would have said, I don't know what I would have said, but honestly, Duck Hodges in the past 2 weeks has taken down the last two number one overall quarterbacks. He's had 152 yards, a touchdown, and no picks. Benny Snell Jr. and Kareth White Jr. had both 41 receiving yards each. In terms of receiving, Deontay Johnson was your leader with 60 receiving yards and a touchdown. But of course, I think the big one was Deontay Johnson with his punt return for a touchdown. So, anyways, I got to pick a winner for this game. And even though the Steelers are favored to win this one, I'm going to say, Buffalo wins and clinch a playoff spot. And now you have our final matchup, which is on Monday Night Football between the Indianapolis Colts and my boys in the New Orleans Saints. Colts came off a 38-35 loss against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Saints came off a tough 48-46 loss against the San Francisco 49ers. Now, starting off with the Colts, one thing both these games had in common was that neither team had a defense. But anyways, Jacoby Brissett had 251 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. Marlon Mack only had 38 rushing yards and a touchdown. But in terms of receiving, your top guy was Marcus Johnson, 105 yards and a touchdown, and Zach Pascal had 74 yards and a touchdown. So honestly, offense was okay for you guys, but it really helped that you picked off Jameis Winston 3 times, which is why you guys had less yards, which was interesting considering that this was a barn burner. And then the Saints, I went in detail about their last loss to the 49ers, so I'll kind of go over some of the key points. So Drew Brees, 349 yards, 5 touchdowns, no picks, an amazing performance. Latavius Murray had 69 rushing yards, 69. Okay, honestly, everybody, no, I'm kidding. I was going to say do something every time I say 69 and make a joke about it. But anyways, he had 69 rushing yards. Alvin Kamara had 25 rushing yards, but also a fumble, which proved to be costly. Michael Thomas, once again, you can't guard Mike, and I can't have biceps. I am still super skinny and white. Had 11 receptions, 134 yards, and a touchdown. Jared Cook had 2 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown, but he would eventually go down with a concussion. But the good news is he is expected to play this week, which is nice. Ted Ginn Jr. had 50 receiving yards, and honestly, that's it. Saints had an amazing game, and even though it seems like they had less yards than what the 49ers had, well, that was all thanks to Deontay Harris for his kick returns, as he had 155 return yards on kick returns and 37 return yards on punt returns, which there was only 2. So honestly, got to pick a winner for this one. Saints, we are favored by a massive amount to win this game. We are favored by 9.5. We win and cover the spread and retake the number 1 seed. And that is going to wrap up my video for today. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Man, I am absolutely burned. But we still have 2 more regular season prediction videos to go. And then we will have my postseason predictions. So anyways, thank you all for watching. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel. Comment down below what other kind of videos you want to see. If you want to see the rest of my predictions videos. And if you want to see my recap on the 49ers Saints game. All the links to that will be in the description below. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Snapchat @SudaTheSavage. Thank you all so much for watching and have a great day. Who Dat Nation is out.